Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
China and Japan have a very long and difficult relationship. For over 1,000 years, these two big countries have moved between being very close and being fierce enemies. They have shared many cultural ideas, such as writing and religion, showing great learning and respect. But they have also fought terrible wars and held deep suspicions of each other. Their long story is like a complex dance, full of both cooperation and struggle over time. Today, in November 2025, a new and serious problem is happening between China and Japan. Japan's Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, made very clear statements about Taiwan. She said that if China used its military force against Taiwan, it could be a threat to Japan's own safety and future. This strong message made China extremely unhappy. China quickly warned its own people to avoid traveling to Japan, causing international worry. This current tension is not a new thing. It is part of a much older and bigger story. The relationship between China and Japan does not follow a straight path. Instead, it has many ups and downs, like repeating cycles. They have long periods of friendship and strong economic closeness, and then times of big fights and strong disagreements. These changes happen because of new technologies, shifts in power, what each country's leaders want, and the strong memory of past events. History always weighs heavily on their decisions and mutual feelings. To truly understand why this crisis in November 2025 is happening, we must look deeply at their past. This current problem cannot be understood alone. It is connected to everything before. It comes from many centuries of old problems, decades of trading many goods together, and different ideas about who should be the leading power in Asia. The important events from a long time ago still shape how China and Japan act today. Knowing their long and deep history is very important for anyone who wants to understand the big problems happening in our world right now. This book will help explain how their long past leads to the very important situation they face today. 2. Old friends, old ways. Long ago, China was a very powerful country and a leader in East Asia. Japan learned much from its big neighbor. This sharing started even before the year 57 CE, when Chinese historical texts first wrote about Japan, then called Hua. China was like a teacher, and Japan was an eager student. Japan wanted to learn new things to make its own society better. Between the 600 and 900 years after Christ, during China's Tang Dynasty, many Japanese people visited the Chinese court. These were not just quick trips. Japanese scholars and monks stayed and studied in China for a long time. They brought back valuable knowledge. For example, Japan adopted Chinese writing systems. They learned about the religion of Buddhism, which greatly changed Japanese life. Important ideas about how a government should work with a central system also came from China. Even architectural styles for beautiful temples and ways to farm land more effectively were shared. This flow of knowledge across the East China Sea helped Japan grow and become more advanced. However, their past was not always peaceful. In the year 663 CE, the first known military conflict between Japan and China-backed forces happened. This was the Battle of Beigang. Japan tried to help a Korean kingdom that was fighting against China's growing power. This showed early signs of competition. After this, Japan slowly began to develop its own unique culture. During the Heian period, from 794 to 1185 CE, Japan stopped sending official groups to China. The Tang dynasty in China began to fall apart around the year 900, and sea travel was dangerous. Also, Japan wanted to grow its own distinct identity. Later, in the late 1300s, the powerful Mongol army from China tried to invade Japan not once, but twice. Both times, Japan fought them off. Japanese legends say that powerful storms, called kamikaze or divine winds, helped defeat the invaders. These victories made Japan feel strong and independent from the continent. Even when Japan closed itself off from most of the world during its Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, trade with China continued. Chinese merchants, sometimes thousands of them, still visited the port of Nagasaki. They exchanged goods like Japanese copper and seafood for Chinese sugar and luxury items. This trade was very important. It showed that even when countries had strict political rules, like Japan's isolation, people still found ways to do business. Economic needs often tied the two nations together, even through long periods of political separation. This complex history, full of learning, conflict, and trade, built the foundation of their long relationship. 3. A new power. Both China and Japan faced new challenges in the 19th century. Powerful Western countries came to Asia with modern ships and weapons. These countries wanted trade and influence. China and Japan had to decide how to respond to this new pressure. Their different choices led to big changes in the region. The West showed its power often, pushing both nations to adapt. China, under the Qing dynasty, tried to make changes slowly. They had lost wars, like the Opium Wars in the 1830s and 1850s, and were forced to open ports for trade. The government started self-strengthening efforts, trying to build new factories and learn Western military skills. But these changes were difficult and faced much resistance. The imperial family sometimes worried about losing power, which often slowed down new ideas and progress. China's political system was not united, so real modernization was hard to achieve. Japan, however, reacted very differently. After American ships forced Japan to open in 1853, Japan's leaders understood that they must modernize quickly. To stay independent, they needed strong industry and military. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration began. This new government replaced the old system. Its goal was for Japan to become modern like Western nations very fast. They built new infrastructure, created a strong modern army and navy, and established a parliament. Japan changed quickly because its new unified government strongly focused on these big reforms. This key difference became very clear in 1894 when Japan and China fought the First Sino-Japanese War over Korea. Japan's modern army and navy quickly won against China's larger but older forces. The war ended in 1895 with the Treaty of Shimonoseki.
China had to give land, including Taiwan, to Japan and pay a large sum of money. This victory shocked the world. It showed that Japan was now a powerful nation in Asia, completely changing the balance of power. For the first time, China had beaten China in a major war. This win caused deep anger and shame in China, setting the stage for more conflicts between the two nations later on. 4. A terrible war. The year 1937 marked the start of a terrible conflict between China and Japan. This was the Second Sino-Japanese War. It was very different from their first war. Japan had a very strong and modern army with new weapons and more training. Because of this, Japan quickly won many battles. They moved fast into China, taking control of important cities.
In December 1937, Japanese soldiers captured Nanjing. This city was China's capital at that time. After the city fell, a period of great horror began. Japanese troops killed a huge number of Chinese prisoners of war. They marched them to the Yangtze River and shot them. Soldiers also murdered many thousands of ordinary people, including women, children, and old people. There was widespread violence, and parts of Nanjing were burned and destroyed. These terrible acts created deep wounds that China would never forget. Many witnesses, including Japanese soldiers themselves, recorded what happened. These events are known as the Nanjing Massacre. Even with these terrible losses and Japan's strong attacks, China did not surrender. The Chinese government moved its base to a city called Chongqing, deep inside the country. They decided to continue the fight, even if it was very hard. Chinese people resisted with great determination, despite facing overwhelming challenges. This long and difficult war for China lasted for 8 years, until 1945. China fought almost alone for many years, refusing to give up its land or its freedom. The Second Sino-Japanese War finally ended in 1945, after the end of World War II. For China, this war was a time of immense pain, loss, and national shame. It created very deep historical wounds that still affect the relationship between China and Japan today. The memories of this conflict are a significant part of China's history and identity. 5. Starting again. After World War II ended in 1945, China and Japan's relationship changed. Japan surrendered, and in 1949, China formed the People's Republic. The Cold War started. China became communist, and Japan allied with the United States. For almost 25 years, China and Japan had no official diplomatic ties. Japan recognized Taiwan's government, not mainland China's. This was a time of political separation between them. But even without official ties, trade continued. This was surprising. Economic links grew despite cold politics. By 1965, Japan was China's main trading partner. Both countries knew trade helped their interests. The Japanese government quietly allowed trade and investments. This showed that practical economic needs could connect them, even with big political differences. A big change came in September 1972.
Japanese Prime Minister Tanaka Kakui visited Beijing. He met China's leaders Mao Zedong and Premier Zhou Enlai. They signed an agreement ending the long abnormal state. Japan apologized for war damage. China chose not to ask for war payments. Japan then recognized the People's Republic of China as the only government, ending official ties with Taiwan. With this new start, China and Japan became official friends. A peace treaty followed in 1978. Economic relations then grew very fast and strong. Japanese businesses invested much money in China, bringing technology and helping China's economy and reform and opening policy. China became a huge market for Japan and offered cheaper manufacturing. By the early 2000s, China was Japan's largest trading partner. Trade reached tens of billions of dollars, creating a massive economic link. 6. New problems. In the early 2000s, China and Japan had very strong economic ties. They traded more goods than ever before. Japanese companies invested a lot of money in China and hired many Chinese workers. Japan's modern technology and investments helped China's factories grow quickly. It seemed like their strong business relationship would help them overcome old problems. But some old problems soon returned. In 2001, Japan's Education Ministry approved new history textbooks for schools. Many people in China felt these books did not talk enough about the bad things Japan did during the Second Sino-Japanese War. This made many Chinese citizens angry. In 2005, there were big protests in China against Japan. Large groups of people marched in cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. Protesters broke windows at some Japanese restaurants and stores. They also threw things at Japanese embassies and offices. The Chinese government officially asked people to be calm, but it also allowed many of the protests to happen. This showed that deep, painful memories from the war were still strong among many Chinese people. After 2008, new arguments started to make the relationship worse. China and Japan both claimed small islands in the East China Sea. Japan calls these islands Senkaku, and China calls them Diaoyu. These islands are not home to people, but they might have natural resources around them. In 2008, a Chinese fishing boat hit Japanese guard boats near these islands. Japan arrested the Chinese captain, which caused strong diplomatic protests from China. The argument over these islands became even more serious in 2012. Japan's government decided to nationalize some of the disputed Senkaku Islands. This meant Japan bought them from their private owner. China saw this move as a big problem and an attack on its claim to the islands. After Japan bought the islands, China reacted quickly and strongly. China sent many ships to patrol the waters near the Senkaku/Diaoyu Islands. More violent anti-Japanese protests happened in China. People damaged Japanese shops, and some even burned Japanese flags. China's Premier Wen Jiabao said clearly that the islands were an inseparable part of China's territory. He warned Japan not to make any concessions. Since then, more Chinese ships have often entered the waters around the islands, making the situation very tense between the two countries. 7. The big argument now. In recent years, China and Japan had a strange relationship. Politically, things were often cold. They argued about history and small islands. But business was strong. Many Japanese companies worked in China. China also sold many goods to Japan. This economic link was important for both countries. Despite the disagreements, trade continued to grow, showing how much their economies relied on each other. This period was marked by ongoing trade and investment, even as political discussions often faced problems. Then November 2025 came, and everything changed. Japan had a new prime minister, Sanai Takaichi. She was the first woman to hold this job. Just weeks after she started, she made some strong comments. During a meeting, she spoke about Taiwan. She said that if China used its army against Taiwan, it could be a threat to Japan's safety. She called it a survival-threatening situation for Japan. This meant Japan might use its own military to help, based on a new interpretation of its constitution. This was a very direct statement, more than any previous Japanese leader had made. China reacted very quickly and angrily. The Chinese government said that Taiwan is part of China. They said other countries should not get involved. A spokesperson from the Foreign Ministry, Lin Zhen, clearly stated this. China's Defense Ministry also gave a strong warning. They said if Japan tried to use force in the Taiwan Strait, China would fight back. They even warned that Japan could face a crushing defeat if it intervened militarily. These strong words showed China's deep anger. The situation became very serious. China's Vice Foreign Minister, Sun Weidong, called Japan's ambassador. He told the ambassador that Taiwan is a very important issue for China. He called it an untouchable red line. At the same time, Chinese ships from the Coast Guard began patrolling near the Diaoyu or Senkaku Islands. Both countries claimed these islands, and this made things more tense. This move showed China's strong position on its territorial claims. The most noticeable action was China's travel warning. China told its people not to travel to Japan. They said there were security risks and more crimes against Chinese people there. Japanese officials did not agree with this. Chinese airlines started offering free changes or refunds for tickets to Japan before December 31. The Ministry of Education also warned Chinese students in Japan about safety risks. This warning quickly hurt Japanese businesses, especially those in tourism. Japanese stocks connected to travel and shopping went down because fewer Chinese tourists were expected. The big argument was now out in the open, affecting many parts of life and business. 8. What happens next? The big argument between China and Japan in November 2025 is a very important moment. It shows us much about the long story of these two powerful countries. This current crisis proves that their relationship often has ups and downs. Their history is full of times when they worked together and times when they were in deep conflict. These current problems are much like old patterns from the past returning. For example, history shows that when one nation gained more power, it often led to competition and tension with the other. This kind of struggle for leadership in the region has been seen many times before. Some people might think that if two countries do a lot of business together, they will surely stay peaceful. They believe strong economic ties can stop wars. China and Japan indeed have a huge amount of trade between them every year. Japanese companies are important in China, and many Chinese products are sold in Japan. But history teaches us a different lesson.
Even with very strong business connections, big problems about history, land, or national power can still cause anger and fighting. Economic ties give good reasons for peace and cooperation, but they do not remove all causes of conflict. The choices made by leaders on both sides are extremely important right now. Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, made very direct comments about Taiwan's defense.
China reacted with strong words and actions, like advising its citizens not to travel to Japan. If leaders choose to communicate openly and seek solutions, the tense situation might get better. But if they choose to be tough and do not talk, the problems could become much worse. The decisions these leaders make will deeply affect millions of people in both nations and the wider world. The future for the relationship between China and Japan is very hard to predict. There are many difficult challenges ahead. There are big risks for both countries and for peace in the entire region. The painful memories of past wars still affect how people feel today. New disagreements over small islands and the situation with Taiwan continue to make the relationship very tense. Both China and Japan are very strong nations, and the world is watching closely to see what happens. This is a very critical moment for both societies. What do you believe will be the most important step for China and Japan to take next to try and improve their relationship?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.